Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Brian E. Roach.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground video podcast, brought to you in part by StubHub, our official partner. Take a night off from a night in. Visit steelcityunderground.com/tickets for great deals on tickets to concerts and sporting events and anything else you can buy a ticket for. So give them a visit and see if you can take a night off from a night in. My name is Brian Roach. I am the host who doesn't like toast. And tonight is a rarity, a actual game night and a victory in the preseason for the Steelers in their preseason opener, which hasn't happened for a while. It was a game. Let's put it that way. There was some interesting stuff. There was some nice things to see, and there was some expected things to see, and there were some things that didn't look so good or were under-impressive. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Josh Dobbs has been getting a lot of speculation. Is he going to be able to beat Landry Jones out for the backup position? I don't think the performance he gave tonight would move him in that direction, but it's good experience for the young man. And I think what was most encouraging is after a very rough start where he threw 2 picks, and both of which did not look good. He came back and he settled. He improved as the game went on. He got better. He allowed the game to come to him, and it improved. I still have concerns about his accuracy. I still have concerns about how he goes about making his decisions. But he did have 2 throws that they looked nice. They were off. They weren't accurate throws, but the ball had some zip, and so that's good. To Kobe Hamilton. Both of those were to Kobe Hamilton. The one, Kobe makes a great catch. He goes up to point the ball, high points the ball, attacks the ball, makes a really nice catch that a lot of receivers probably couldn't make. It was an impressive catch. The second one, which was the touchdown, the ball was behind him, and Kobe again, he makes the play, but he had to slow down for the ball, and it's a good thing he was as far ahead of the DB as he was, because the ball was a little bit behind him. And that's what I mean about his accuracy. But you know what? Let's focus on the positive with Josh Dobbs, and the positive is that he improved as the game went on. He got better as the game went on. That is in and of itself is at least encouraging. He didn't fold under the pressure of those 2 initial interceptions, and he maintained his composure, and he got better. Hey, he played better than Bart Houston, which... look, I know that we have a tendency sometimes to fall in love with camp bodies and people who are there, and we think maybe that's going to be the next big thing. Bart Houston is not going to be the next big thing. Do not get attached to Bart Houston. You may not see Bart Houston again during the preseason. If Landry Jones is able to come back from his abdominal strain, I don't think you'll see Bart Houston get another snap the rest of the preseason, but we'll see. I want to take a quick minute and apologize to Zach Mettler, who is one of the Steel City Underground contributors and who was kind enough to join me earlier in an attempt to record this podcast, and I screwed it up. Messed up the audio, so Zach, I apologize. We'll get you back on later, and I'm redoing this, but I'll try and quote you a couple times within this one because Zach had some great input, and it's unfortunate that my stupidity in setting up the recording session will deprive you of listening to Zach's input. He's a bright guy and would make me look better than I look now. So I apologize to Zach, but I will try and bring in some of your points here. As far as the receivers go, look, there's not a lot to talk about. No Justin Hunter, no Antonio Brown, no Martavis Bryant, no Sammy Coates. We essentially had DHB, Kobe Hamilton, Eli Rogers, Kanan Severin, and other than Kobe Hamilton, who had the splash plays and the touchdown, Kanan Severin had 2 catches for I think 24 yards, something like that, and nobody else had more than a single reception. it was a less than outstanding performance for the offense. Let's put it that way. They didn't look explosive, but who would have expected them to? Again, we don't have most of the starters playing. It was what it was. Now, one of the nice things I will say is, even in a less than impressive running back situation, with no James Conner and no Le'Veon Bell, Terrell Watson, the Nightmare, as Mike Tomlin has dubbed him, he looked okay. It's an interesting. I mean, he's a one cut kind of back, right? He's a one cut downhill back. He's going to make his move and he's going to plow. And he had a nice touchdown run. He looked good for what he is, which is a pounder. I was I don't want to say impressed, but I was pleased to see that what he was showing in camp translated to the game. Okay. Because a lot of times what you see in camp, inside of camp, in the practices, you get these guys who you think are amazing and they don't translate to the game. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But that's a perfect example, actually, of the next guy I want to talk about, which is Fitzgerald Toussaint. Fitz has been the guy in camp. Everybody's been like, wow, he's the best back in camp. He's looked really good. He knows the playbook. He looks sharp. Didn't really translate to the game. He didn't look all that impressive. Now, whether that's because he's playing behind, some second string offensive lineman, and the Giants' D-line is reasonably good. They're a solid D-line. It's hard to say, but Niall Davis also didn't look that good. He was okay. It was just not an amazing night for the offense. Tight ends didn't really get involved. I know Faison Odom was targeted at least once. I think Jesse James had one catch. Grimble had a touchdown that was taken away by penalty, which was a nice catch. But, the tight ends didn't really have a lot of involvement. One positive note on the offensive side, I think the guard, Ethan Cooper, who's an undrafted rookie, I know he got a lot of talk after the game by Tunch and Wolf, who were really impressed with how he was performing in the latter parts of the game. And for complete disclosure, I didn't get to watch the end of the game. Why? I had to listen to it on Steelers Nation Radio because NFL Network kept putting the Chiefs on, and it was driving me crazy. Now, they would flip back, but really towards the end of the game, they just stuck with the Chiefs. And so I had to just listen. And listening in, you can hear what's going on, but luckily, we're talking about the fourth quarter of Bart Houston, and there wasn't that much to see. But they were really talking up Ethan Cooper. So I'm going to try and go back and watch what I can to see if I can and single that out. But it's good to know that maybe that's a guy who can develop the same way as Zach was talking about, as B.J. Finney did, where he makes his way to the practice squad and then eventually, becomes a capable backup for the Steelers. So that was nice. Beyond that, the offense did enough to win the game. You can't really say much else. On the defensive side of the ball, we had the debut of a couple guys. We had the debut of T.J. Watt, which kind of went over pretty well. 2 sacks, 3 tackles. He broke up a pass, and he looked, for the most part, pretty good. Now, look, the first sack TJ had, it's a sack, and I don't want to take it away from him, but he was handled on that play. If the quarterback doesn't run towards him as he's almost going to the ground, he probably doesn't get that sack. It's still a credit to him that he had the awareness and the athletic ability to adjust and make the play. The second one, though, showed what I think the Steelers want and expect out of TJ Watt, where even though it was a mistake on the Giants, clearly a breakdown on the play, one of the things Zach pointed out when I was talking to him was that on plays like that, right, a lot of times, especially for younger linebackers, they will overrun the play, and they make an athletic quarterback like Josh Johnson look like Michael Vick, because he's able to escape, get around the edge, and make them miss badly. And TJ Watt didn't miss badly. He made the play. And so that was an impressive thing to see, and a nice thing to have happen, right? I thought he looked good for the most part. His motor was there, which, you know, that's what you want to see from TJ, is that he's given 110% every time. And he was. He got swept up in a couple plays. Flowers handled him in a couple plays. It was nice to see he had some flexibility, position flexibility. You know, in the second half, they flipped him to the other side of the ball. Instead of playing on the right side, he played on the left side, or vice versa. I can't remember because I'm terrible. Which one of these is right, which one of these lefts? Who knows? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. And it looked good. You know, he looked good. That was nice. The thing that, as far as the linebackers go, the thing that I was most impressed with, though, was Mr. Moats, Arthur Moats. Arthur Moats had an evening, did he not? His first sack was an effort sack, man. He fought and he fought and he fought, and the quarterback didn't get rid of the ball, and he finally got to him and made the play. Once we got into the second half, as Mike Tomlin said at the end of the game, it looked like the 11th grader playing with the JV. Arthur Moats was having some fun. And I think the nice thing is, you know, for a guy like Arthur Moats, who is really a quality human being, right? He's a great face to the franchise. He is a great individual. He, purports himself very well in the community, and, he just seems like a heck of a guy, right? For him, he's been, speculation has been made that he might not make the team. And I think this was a statement by Arthur Moats saying, nobody's taking my job. And it certainly he is helped by the fact that Keon Adams is dinged up and couldn't play any snaps tonight. Because Keon Adams is generally the guy that they think maybe is going to eventually take away his spot. Anthony Chickalo didn't play, so it was really Moats and TJ who got the majority of the snaps tonight, if not all of them. And they performed well, and Arthur Moats performed very well. So, the only way at this point that his position becomes threatened, you figure they're going to keep five outside linebackers. So that's going to be James Harrison, Bud Dupree, Anthony Chickalo, TJ Watt, and Arthur Moats. The only way one of those guys gets supplanted is if he can get back on the field. I really was looking forward to seeing Keon Adams tonight. Didn't work out because he got dinged up, couldn't play. He needs to get out there. In fact, there's a whole slew of bodies that we need to get out there, as Mike Tomlin has been saying. Cam Sutton has been dinged up. Artie Burns has been dinged up. We need to see these guys, and they need to get reps, even though Artie Burns is a starter and had a great year last year. This is only his second year. He still needs to get some work. Hopefully we'll start to see some of these guys come back in and get into training camp and come back into play. I was really impressed with the D-line, though. Cam Hayward on Twitter the other day was asking for what are nicknames for the three of them, for Tuitt, Hargraves, and Hayward. And I have dubbed them the three horsemen of the apocalypse. That's what I'm calling them. I don't care if he doesn't like it. I don't care if he doesn't think that's the best nickname. I'm sticking with it. The three horsemen of the apocalypse: Cam Hayward, Javon Hargrave, and Stephon Tuitt. They looked good. All right, they had their way with the Giants' offensive line for the time that they were in. Javon Hargrave was dominant when he was in there. I mean, he was having none of the Giants' center. He was just having none of that guy. And as Zach was bringing up, that's a guy that Zach views as maybe a top 5 center in the league. And Javon Hargrave was dominating. I mean, he was just getting great leverage. He was getting great push. He was showing athleticism. The three of them were making their presence known when they were there. I was really impressed, and it was really encouraging to see. Now, when they came out of the game, all of a sudden the Giants could run the ball a little bit. And the guys who were backing them up didn't seem to have the same initial push. But now you're not talking about one guy chipping in. Now it's 3 backups joining. And, so I kind of get that. I understand, hey, it's all right. They did eventually get better, and they shut things down again. And that's encouraging because it shows that they still have some depth. Guys like L.T. Walton, guys like, Tyson Alualu, who almost had a sack tonight. Almost. He was really close. Didn't get it, but he was really close. So that was encouraging. I was a little surprised I didn't see more out of Tyler Matakevich or the inside linebackers, period, to be honest with you. Don't really remember their names being called very much. I think Matakevich had 1 tackle at some point. Vince Williams, I think, had 2. But they weren't noticed. Now, whether they weren't noticed because everybody else was doing such a good job that they didn't have anything to do or not, I'm not sure. There was a brief period of time where it felt like the tight end for the Giants was getting open quite easily. Then that went away. So, I thought the defense just looked good overall. And then there's one other guy that I haven't been necessarily on his hype train, as I was telling Zach. And it's Zach, both of our Zachs, Zach Mettler and Zach, I can't say his last name, and he knows it, and I hate you, Zach. It's Caledonia or Celedonia or something Adonia. Zachadonia. I'm just going to call him Zach, who annoys me. But both Zachs have been on the Mike Hilton hype train, okay? A lot of people have been on the Mike Hilton hype train. And as I was talking about earlier, there's a lot of times you'll see a guy who performs way above the bar in camp, but when it's time to get on the field, he does nothing. Well, that didn't happen tonight. Mike Hilton was everywhere, doing everything. He had a sack. He had a fumble recovery. He made tackles on special teams. He made tackles, on defense. He broke up passes. He was all over the place. I was really surprised at his blitz ability, right? He was speedy. Again, taking down an athletic quarterback like Geno Smith, no problem. He had a nice fumble recovery, and he looked good on special teams. And Zach was very clear in pointing this out, and I agree with him completely. That is going to be Mike Hilton's route to the 53-man roster, is on special teams, and then maybe he can contribute some on defense as he acclimates himself even more. But in order for him to make the 53, he's going to have to be a special teams guy. And he looked good on special teams as well. I'm not fully ready to board the Mike Hilton hype train yet. I need a little bit more evidence before I'm ready to do that. But I will say that I looked at the ticket for that train tonight, and I wasn't immediately turning my head away from it and saying, I'm not buying that ticket. I was considering it. So I was impressed. Mike Hilton did a great job tonight. Look, beyond that, Chris Boswell, the Wizard of Boz, he made his kicks. They looked good. He looked easy. He looked, as some person said, and I don't really know how kickers get into anything but midseason form, but somebody said he looked like he's in midseason form. He looked good. He looked solid. Jordan Berry had some nice punts. Had a nice punting average, I think something around 45 yards. They looked pretty good, considering that for the most part these weren't the starters, these weren't the main guys, and that's encouraging because it shows us that we have some depth, and that could be important as time goes on and the wear and tear and attrition of the normal season hits. So there is one other thing that came up tonight in relation to the Steelers and cornerbacks. And that is that, there's been some speculation that the Steelers might be sniffing around the Rams' Tremaine Johnson. The Rams made a splash by trading for Sammy Watkins with the Bills. So there's some theory that the Rams are in trade mode and they're going to dump some high salaries or whatnot. And Tremaine Johnson is a high salary. Look, he's on the franchise tag. He's going to make $17 million. And whenever one of these rumors gets started, Steelers Nation tends to go crazy, and we start to think, oh, we got to sign that guy. He's going to be great. That's the answer. He is the one. He's Neo. He's not. He's really not Neo. And the Steelers that's not the way they do business. They're not going to give up future draft picks. They're not going to give up future anything for a guy that they're renting for a year. He's on the franchise tag for $17 million, which is way more than he's worth. And there's no guarantee you can sign him again after the end of the season. $17 million, are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? The only way the Steelers would even consider this deal, is if they could sign, and I don't even know if they're allowed. I don't even know if by league rules you can do this, but if they could somehow sign Johnson to a deal that invalidated the franchise tag, so he's not playing under the franchise tag this year, and could get him to sign a deal at a more reasonable rate, then I could think, all right, if they can lock him up for a couple years, maybe they'd consider it. But for the most part, no, they're not going to do that. This is way out of bounds, and I just wanted to make a statement that that's not happening. The Steelers are not doing that. They're not. I don't know why somebody thinks they're sniffing around, or whether they really are sniffing around, or whether they just made a call and said, hey, what would it take? And that's called doing your due diligence, not sniffing around. And if they find out what it's going to take is this, hey, there's no question that our cornerback core has been depleted by injuries. And, you got Senquez Golden with a soft tissue injury who isn't doing any conditioning work on the sides. He's not doing anything to make you think he's about to come back to practice. You've got Cam Sutton, who is in exactly the same boat. You have absolutely no reason to think these guys are getting back on the field anytime soon because they're not doing anything to show progress. And that is concerning because where we thought we had all this depth, maybe we don't. So I can see how maybe that, this whole Tremaine Johnson story could be a fit. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's even a story, to be honest with you. But I wanted to at least mention it because it did come up during the game tonight, and I know that if once Steelers Nation gets its teeth into that, it's going to become a much bigger story than it was. But overall, look, it was a nice win. We don't get a lot of preseason wins because, to be honest, who cares? It's the preseason. It is much more about seeing what guys can do than it is about trying to win games. Okay? And I know that as fans, we don't want to hear that. We want to see victories. But, we got to be realistic. If another team decides to play their starters for a longer period of time than we do, then they may have a better chance to win that preseason game. If their fourth and fifth stringers are better than ours and they come back in the end of the fourth quarter and score a bunch of points, they're going to win the game. And who cares? Because none of those guys are going to be on anybody's team, come the end of the cutdowns. So let's enjoy it for what it was. A moderately interesting introduction for Josh Dobbs, a nice start for TJ Watt, a moderately spectacular beginning for Mike Hilton, and let's see where it goes from there. So until next time, everybody, be good, be safe, and I will talk to you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.